Welcome to Conversations on SA Media. Finally, the Assad regime no longer exists in Syria, but no one knows what's in store next. The Syrian fighters raced into Damascus unopposed on Sunday, overthrowing President Bashar al-Assad. For Syrians, it brought a sudden, unexpected end to a war that has been deep freeze for years, with hundreds of thousands already dead, cities pounded to dust, an economy hollowed by global sanctions, and no resolution in sight. As Assad fled into Russia, his old ally, there are doubts about who are the winners and losers in this new Syria. The Middle East had earlier seen the fading out of Saddam Hussein and Muammar al-Gaddafi, two of the most powerful dictators of their times. For over 12 years, Bashar al-Assad held up to the tottering dictatorship, shunned by international community by way of economic sanctions. The Assad family had ruled Syria with an iron grip of over 50 years. The only support that Assad had was from the Russians, who wanted a strategic partner in the Middle East, and of course Iran, who wanted to keep the Sunnis from coming to power in Syria. Syria was closed to foreign journalists, and many who took the risk sneaked in from Lebanon into Syria. Journalists who managed to travel along the highway from the border into Syria reported burned cars and buses and uninhabited, shelled out ghost towns. Nothing has been rebuilt in Syria since the war that broke out in 2011. The Arab Spring Revolution saw people in cities like Homs protesting against Assad regime, demanding greater freedom. The response from the Syrian regime was simply brutal. Soldiers opened fire and many were killed. Russia and Iran stepped in to shore up support for Assad. Except for the capital, Damascus, the rest of the country was in ruins, and 90% of the Syrian people live below the poverty line. The collapse of the Assad regime in a week has surprised international observers. The rebels sweeping down from Aleppo in the northwest quickly captured Homa and Homs before entering the capital, Damascus. Bashar al-Assad fled before the rebel fighters could reach him. How did this happen? A combination of factors sounded the death knell for the Assad regime. First, Assad's principal backers, Iran, Lebanese Hezbollah, and Russia, were preoccupied with their own conflicts. Russia was bogged down in Ukraine, while Hezbollah has been battered by its conflict with Israel. The Lebanese group lost almost entire top leadership. That conflict also sucked in Iran. Therefore, Assad was left exposed. The second, in 13 years of Syrian civil war, had exhausted the Syrian army. Corruption was rife, and given the Western sanction, the Syrian economy, especially its GDP, was barely staying afloat. Third, Turkey has been dealing a deal with Assad, but Assad refused on the grounds that Turkey occupies certain areas of northern Syria. But the return of 3 million Syrian refugees sheltering in Turkey was a huge political issue for President Erdogan and Ankara. Thus, there is a strong speculation that Erdogan gave a green light to the rebels to go on the offensive this time. It would take a lot of hard work to build a new Syria, which the rebels claim would be a beacon for Islamic nation. That is precisely a worry for US and its allies, who back the Kurds who control 1/4 of Syria. Then there's Turkey, who's also trying to fish in the troubled waters. They support the Islamic militia but hate the Kurds. In November 2024, the dormant civil war was ignited as a coalition of rebel forces began a massive offensive against the Syrian government, forcing the government forces to abandon huge territories. Assad's Ba'athist party, which represents a wide mix of socialist and Arab nationalist ideas, was brutal in reality. Assad was also a member of the Alawite religious minority group, which predominantly inhabits the coastal areas of the country. The Sunni religious radical militant groups were concentrated in the city of Idlib, a loose alliance whose common grouse was a hatred of Assad. The strongest of them was Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS for short, which was formed in 2017 out of multiple jihadi groups, including al-Nusra, which was a front for the Al-Qaeda. Since 2018, HTS has been recognized as a terrorist organization by many countries. But over the past few years, HTS leaders have tried to be more moderate. It has over 30,000 fighters and controls territories through the Syrian Salvation Government, an administrative body aligned with the group. The group have promised to protect the rights of religious minorities in Syria, but that is something questionable. The current leader of HTS, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, was earlier associated with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Then there is a Syrian National Army which was founded in 2017, which is again a group of various militant groups and some foreign fighters. They are funded by Turkey with funds and equipment. And the Syrian National Army has a two-front war to fight. One, it was against Assad, while the other was against the Kurdish groups in the north and the northeast. The Kurds, also called the Syrian Democratic Force, are funded by the United States and Western nations and has connections with some other countries. And that complicates the situation further. The HTS does not see eye to eye with the regime in Ankara and in keeping with the door negotiations open with the SDF or the Kurds. The area controlled by the Kurds also includes some Arab groups and southeast of Syria. The US and Western alliance want the SDF to keep the ISIS groups under check. The United States actually maintains a military presence in northeastern Syria with over 900 personnel. Rebel leader Abu Muhammad al-Jolani claimed that there was no room for turning back now. The rebel coalition said it was working to complete a transfer of power to a transitional governing body with executive powers. Jolani also claimed that the great Syrian revolution has moved to the stage of struggle and the Assad regime has been overthrown. And now it's a time to build Syria together and befit the sacrifices of its people. But Turkey appears to be a clear winner of all this. It seems to have some influence on the rebels who have taken Damascus. The Syrian refugees in Turkey have already begun returning to their country, something that Erdogan badly wanted. Meanwhile, the United States President-elect Donald Trump is saying that the US shouldn't get involved in the new situation in Syria. But the fact is that there are 900 American troops remaining in Syria. Additionally, the Kurds also have staunch allies of Washington. That is something that Washington is unlikely to squander. In this entire battle, Iran and Russia are the clear losers. Assad was a vital part of Tehran's so-called axis of resistance. With him gone, Iran can't effectively provide any support to Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Hamas in Gaza. Russia, which had an air base in Khmeim and naval base in Tartus in Syria, is already scrambling to save its assets. Meanwhile, Syrian Prime Minister Mohammad Ghazi al-Jalali has called for free elections in a country where Assad's opponents faced barrel bombs. Jalali also said that he had been in contact with Jolani to discuss managing the transitional period, marking the notable development in efforts to shape Syria's political future. Meanwhile, Israel is not keeping quiet. It conducted a series of 3 airstrikes against major security complex in the Kafr Sousa district of the Syrian capital Damascus, along with a research center which believed the Iranian scientists had developed missiles. Prime Minister Netanyahu said he has ordered the Israeli military to seize the demilitarized buffer zone on the border with Syria. He said that the 50-year-old disengagement agreement between the two countries had collapsed and the Syrian forces have abandoned their positions. Netanyahu said that Israel will not allow any hostile force to establish itself on its border. The incoming Trump administration in the United States is being handed a very different geopolitical chessboard. Iran is weakened, Israel is strong, Russia has just lost a strategic ally. This will certainly have repercussions on any negotiations to end the Ukraine war. Turkey had supplied Ukraine with the Barkhitya drones at the beginning of the war and strongly advocates for the return of Crimea to Ukraine. But Turkey also acquired the S-400 air defense system from Russia. Erdogan will now ask for a better deal from the United States, mainly to get Washington to rein in the Kurds and to help with the repatriation of the Syrian refugees. The permutations can go on and on and on. This is a new Syria. It can at best be called a mess. No one knows what's happening, or no one will ever know what's going to happen. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.